The decision was delivered without ceremony, without applause, and without any possibility of retreat. Inside a sealed chamber at Windsor, Prince William placed his signature beneath an order that removed Prince Harry's remaining royal titles, honors, privileges, and ceremonial standing. One stroke of the pen ended decades of protection. But the documents lying beside William revealed something even more devastating. This was not simply punishment. It was the final response to a secret the monarchy could no longer contain. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William sat alone, turning Queen Elizabeth II's signet pen between his fingers, as though its weight might steady him. A royal order, meaning a formal command, issued under crown authority, waited beneath his hand. This one stripped Harry of every remaining title, honor, ceremonial privilege, and recognized position connected to the monarchy. It did more than change how he would be addressed. It removed him from official records, ended his ability to present himself as a recognized royal figure, and severed his institutional link to the family. Charles entered without speaking. The king read the last page, removed his glasses, and placed them beside the folder. He did not challenge William, yet he would not meet his son's eyes. That silence mattered, because the monarch was watching one child close the royal door on the other. William felt that grief, but the file had already turned a personal choice into an unavoidable decision. The papers included a sealed memorandum bearing Harry's signature. A memorandum is a written agreement recording duties, restrictions, or promises. This one confirmed that he had accepted strict limits on private correspondence, financial disclosures, and confidential family material after leaving royal service. An archivist then delivered the detail that hardened William's expression. The agreement had been attached to copied letters and internal briefings, but several pages were missing. Someone had tried to conceal how much protected material had traveled beyond palace control. William lowered the pen and asked the private secretary to read the decisive sentence aloud. The words, "all remaining titles and distinctions," settled heavily across the room. Charles remained still. The prince paused, signed, closed the folder, and said, "There can be no confusion after today." Yet the order explained only what William had done, not why the documents had wounded him so deeply. The answer lay inside a promise between two brothers, one Harry was never expected to break. And as the ink dried beneath William's name, attention turned from the order itself to the two brothers whose private history had made such a public ending inevitable. Long before titles became weapons and sealed documents became evidence, William and Harry were simply two brothers walking behind the same coffin, carrying the same loss in painfully different ways. One moved closer to duty. The other spent years trying to escape its shadow. Now, with Harry's final royal identity erased by William's hand, the tragedy was no longer about rank. It was about everything they had promised each other, before resentment replaced trust. William remained alone after the signing. He opened a drawer and found an old photograph from a military engagement, the brothers laughing before duty divided them. When an aide entered with revised papers, the prince turned the image face down, hiding how deeply it unsettled him. Duty had shaped William long before he understood its price. The crown, meaning the institution of monarchy passed from one sovereign to the next, was the legacy Queen Elizabeth II had trained him to defend. Harry's breach was therefore more than disobedience. To the future king, it threatened something both brothers had once promised to protect. Harry read the order twice in California before speaking. Meghan watched confusion harden into anger, then collapse into stillness when he saw that William had personally authorized the removal. Those titles had remained proof that leaving royal service had not erased his birth, his memories, or Diana's place in his life. Without them, he felt formally rejected by the world that formed him. The deeper betrayal came from an agreement almost forgotten. Years earlier, William and Harry had promised that neither would release, reproduce, or privately circulate personal correspondence involving Diana, Charles, or the late Queen without warning the other. That promise protected their mother from becoming ammunition, and their father from exposure through grief neither son fully understood. Harry believed Charles would stop the order. Then, a palace official read a handwritten line from the king, "I will not obstruct the constitutional decision." A constitutional decision, is an action taken to protect the monarchy's rules and stability, rather than satisfy personal emotion. Harry placed the notice on the kitchen counter, asked to appeal directly, and learned that communication would pass only through formal channels. His hand tightened around the counter's edge. Meghan said his name, but he barely heard her. He let William do it, Harry whispered. Yet Charles's silence had begun months earlier, during a private ceremony where his younger son crossed a line no father, brother, or sovereign could ignore. That moment had changed sorrow into judgment, and hesitation into royal consent. To understand why the king stepped aside, the story must return to the precise moment when a private family grievance became an institutional threat. Every royal crisis has one moment that later appears unavoidable. A sentence spoken too loudly. A door opened at the wrong time. A document seen by someone who was never meant to read it. For this family, that moment came during a private memorial ceremony at St. George's Chapel. Harry had been invited as a son, not as a representative of the crown. But before the evening ended, a confidential letter connected to Diana had vanished from the royal archive room. Charles arranged the memorial months before the titles were removed. He invited William and Harry to mark an anniversary connected to Princess Diana, with no press, outside guests, or personal staff present. A memorial observance is a private ceremony held to honor someone who has died. The king hoped it would give his sons one final space where grief could exist without public judgment. Harry entered, carrying years of resentment. After the service, an archivist showed the brothers protected family items. Handwritten notes from Diana, private letters from Queen Elizabeth II, and a sealed reconciliation letter prepared for her grandsons. A royal archive is the secured collection where sensitive family and institutional records are preserved. William could examine the originals, while Harry received supervised copies and was asked to step back. Humiliation hit him immediately. Harry obeyed, but his silence unsettled William. The prince found him in a side corridor and insisted the restriction was procedural, not personal. Harry answered that every palace rule became procedural only after it was used against him. William warned him not to turn the evening into another battle. His brother replied that the battle began when trust was divided between them. Later that same night, Harry entered the archive preparation room without permission. He had secretly kept a phone he was required to surrender, and he photographed the sealed reconciliation letter. William caught him holding the pages beneath the camera and ordered him to stop. Harry refused to delete the images until he could read everything. Charles arrived as Harry returned the letter to its protective sleeve. The king asked, "Did you copy it?" Harry answered, "I protected what belonged to me." His father turned away without offering reassurance. Palace investigators later confirmed that the photographs included private medical discussions, family security arrangements, and Diana's wishes for both sons, all protected by the memorandum Harry had signed. William initially resisted immediate punishment. Then the photographs resurfaced inside a second collection, marked with annotations that could only have come from someone close to Harry. What began as a desperate act inside a silent archive room soon forced the brothers into the confrontation neither of them had been able to avoid. There were no advisors in the room, no lawyers seated between them, and no palace official prepared to soften the truth. William stood beside a closed window at Windsor, while Harry faced him across a narrow table. Between them lay the copied photographs, the signed memorandum, and the order that had not yet been approved. The brothers had entered believing they could argue about documents. Within minutes, they were fighting over Diana, loyalty, abandonment, and who had the right to remember their mother. William had arranged the meeting before approving the removal. He gave Harry one final chance to explain how the photographs left his possession, and why annotated copies appeared inside a privately assembled media file. A memorandum is a written record of promises, duties, or restrictions. This one carried Harry's signature, and proved he understood the limits placed on protected family correspondence. Harry entered without Meghan, lawyers, aides, or recording devices. William had insisted there would be no institutional buffer between them, only the original agreement and the recovered pages. The prince accused his brother of turning grief into a deliberate breach of trust. "Those letters," he said, "belong to the family as a whole, not to whichever son felt most wounded." Harry struck back. He argued that the palace controlled access to Diana's memory while demanding his silence. William, he said, confused inheritance with ownership and duty with moral superiority. The accusation landed hard because the future king had spent years believing duty was the only shield strong enough to protect what remained of their mother. William opened the second file. Comments beside the photographed pages identified which passages could cause the greatest embarrassment if released, including one reference to Charles's private conversations. Harry denied writing the notes, and his shock appeared genuine. Investigators had confirmed the handwriting was not his, but the file had traveled through a communications account previously authorized by his household. Someone close to him had prepared the material for possible publication. Harry reached across the table, but William placed his palm over the folder. "You took something that wasn't yours," he said. Harry's voice rose. "She was my mother too." The prince lowered his own voice and answered, "That is why I begged you not to turn her into evidence." Harry demanded that William choose between brotherhood and the crown. William replied that the choice had already been made when the letter was copied and allowed to leave Harry's control. No apology followed. No embrace ever came. When Harry walked out and the door closed behind him, the argument passed from two wounded brothers into the hands of those empowered to protect the crown at any cost. The room was smaller than the public imagined, and far quieter than any courtroom. There were no raised voices, no ceremonial robes, and no dramatic declaration from a throne. Yet inside that private council chamber, Harry's remaining royal identity was reduced to a series of clauses, precedents, and signatures. William may have carried the emotional burden, but the authority behind the decision came from people trained to separate family pain from institutional survival. William entered carrying the recovered files and the weight of what had happened between the brothers. He placed the evidence before the sovereign's legal advisors, constitutional officers, the keeper of the royal archives, and Princess Anne. The keeper is the official responsible for protecting the monarchy's sensitive records. Anne's task was to decide whether the proposed action defended the crown or merely punished Harry. Personal betrayal was not enough. The council required proof that Harry had broken written undertakings tied to protected royal material, because crown honors could not be removed to settle a family feud. William understood that distinction, yet it offered no comfort. Anne studied him before asking the question no one else dared to raise. Would he recommend punishment if the person named were not his brother? William hesitated, then answered that the evidence demanded the same response, though it would never hurt in the same way. Charles entered after the legal review. The king found a space for his signature of acknowledgement, meaning formal confirmation that he accepted the recommendation. His hand hovered above the page as he asked whether a lesser sanction could preserve Harry's connection to the family. The hidden clause ended that hope. The memorandum stated that unauthorized copying or circulation of protected correspondence automatically triggered a review of every honor granted through royal discretion. Archive specialists restored deleted scans from an encrypted device. Those pages included references to George, Charlotte, Louis, and future security planning. Charles read their names twice. His expression hardened, and he pushed the folder toward William. "You must protect what comes after us," he said. The monarch did not sign the removal order himself, but his words removed the final barrier. Anne placed Queen Elizabeth II's memorandum beside the recovered evidence. The late monarch's instruction warned that partial punishment created permanent confusion. She advised William to remove every ambiguity, because anything left untouched would become the center of dispute. The council approved the instrument. Yet before the palace could notify Harry securely, someone inside the process released the first details. The decision was meant to arrive through a private channel, but before Harry could hear it from his family, the outside world began announcing the end of his royal status. Harry did not first learn the full extent of his removal from William, Charles, or a palace official. He saw it forming across the bottom of a television screen while an unanswered secure phone lay beside him. Within minutes, commentators were listing the honors he had lost, the privileges that had vanished, and the royal doors now closed to him. The institution had moved with brutal efficiency. The family, once again, had moved too slowly. Harry watched the broadcast as palace systems changed around him. Royal directories were amended, ceremonial records rewritten, and honorary distinctions marked as withdrawn. A royal directory is the official record showing who holds recognized positions within the monarchy. The change mattered because it removed more than a style of address. He could no longer use titles in formal agreements, appear in ceremonial listings, claim reserved status at state occasions, or expect automatic palace recognition during future visits. Shock turned into anger. Harry called Charles repeatedly, but each attempt reached a private secretary. When the written notification finally arrived, he threw it onto a chair and demanded to know why his father could not speak to him directly. Meghan urged him to issue a forceful public response, then stopped when he admitted that losing the titles hurt less than knowing William had become the person willing to remove them. Another blow followed. Harry's name vanished from the seating plan for an upcoming family memorial. A ceremonial seating plan is the arrangement deciding where each person stands or sits according to role and status. Beside the removal, someone had written, "Private attendance may be reconsidered." Harry could not tell whether he had been excluded as a royal or rejected as a son. Palace officials soon confirmed through an internal access log that the approved wording had reached a broadcaster before the final notice was transmitted. Only 6 people had seen it. Someone inside the process had ensured the decision became public before any private appeal could weaken it. Harry walked outside alone, still gripping his phone, as Charles's secretary explained that the king was unavailable. He ended the call, sat on a low step, and removed an old military pin from his jacket. Then he closed it inside his fist. William faced the same consequence at Windsor. He watched Harry's name disappear from the digital royal register, shut the screen, and ordered that no triumphant language appear in the palace statement. Yet restraint could not repair what the leak had destroyed. One final meeting remained. As the machinery of the monarchy completed Harry's removal, the father who had remained silent finally agreed to face the son who believed he had been abandoned. The final turning point did not come in a council chamber or before the cameras. It came in a small sitting room where Charles and Harry met without uniforms, secretaries, lawyers, or prepared statements. For the first time since the order was signed, no one spoke for the monarchy. No one spoke for William. There was only a father who had permitted the decision, and a son who needed to know whether anything remained after the titles were gone. Charles agreed to the meeting only after Harry requested one conversation outside the formal review. The king chose a secluded royal residence and made one condition clear before his son arrived. The legal and ceremonial decision would stand. A formal review is the official process used to examine evidence before an institutional judgment is made. This meeting was not about reversing the order. It was about discovering whether anything personal had survived it. Harry asked the question immediately. Why had his father not called before William signed? Charles admitted that he feared speaking as a parent would weaken a decision he had already accepted as sovereign. He had spent years believing time would soften the conflict between his sons. Instead, his silence allowed every grievance to grow larger, more public, and harder to forgive. Then Charles disclosed the detail Harry had never heard. In a documented account prepared for the review, William first recommended a temporary suspension rather than permanent removal. The prince changed his recommendation only after restored pages exposed references to George, Charlotte, Louis, and future security arrangements. Harry stopped arguing. For the first time, he understood what had transformed his brother's pain into resolve. Harry finally admitted that he had shared the photographs with one trusted advisor for safekeeping. He believed the material would remain private and insisted he had not written the annotations. Yet the confession left nowhere to hide. His own choice had opened the path that allowed the documents to travel beyond his control. Charles placed an unsigned family memorial invitation between them. "This is not a title," he said. Harry stared at it and asked whether he was still welcome. The king answered, "As my son, yes. As a representative of the crown, no." Harry accepted the invitation without demanding restoration, clarification, or a revised order. He had lost his royal role, but not every personal bond. Outside that room, however, the decision was already becoming a national spectacle, and one public image would soon define both brothers forever in history. The father and son left with no restored titles, yet the fragile distinction between family and crown was about to be tested before millions of watching eyes. By sunrise, the decision no longer belonged to Windsor, William, or Harry. It belonged to every newspaper editor, broadcaster, royal commentator, and citizen who saw in the brothers' fracture something larger than a family dispute. Some called the removal necessary, others called it merciless. Yet one image outside Buckingham Palace captured the national mood more powerfully than any argument. Two men standing beneath the gates, holding opposite signs bearing the names of Diana's sons. Buckingham Palace answered with a restrained statement, confirming that Harry's remaining honors and titles had been withdrawn after a completed review of protected documents and written undertakings. A written undertaking is a formal promise that can carry institutional consequences when broken. The wording mattered because it framed the decision as discipline, not revenge, and protected William from claims that he had acted only as an angry brother. Broadcasters split the story in two. William became the future king defending constitutional discipline, while Harry became the wounded prince expelled by the institution he once served. The prince watched one commentator call the outcome a personal victory, and immediately ordered his office to remove praise of his strength from a prepared briefing. He insisted there was nothing victorious about erasing his brother's formal place. Harry suffered differently. Headlines reused the image of both brothers walking behind Diana's coffin, and he told Meghan during a private recorded conversation that their childhood grief had again become a weapon neither son controlled. Then one national newspaper published William's signing hand above the words, "The last title falls," with a smaller image of Harry holding Charles's memorial invitation. Public opinion shifted again during an evening broadcast. A senior correspondent confirmed through a documented palace briefing that the decisive pages included references to George, Charlotte, Louis, and their future security. The argument was no longer only about embarrassment. It had become a question of protecting children who could not defend their own privacy. Outside Buckingham Palace, one man raised a sign reading, "William protected the crown," while another held, "Harry is still Diana's son." When the changing of the guard began, a formal ceremony in which soldiers replaced those on duty, the two stopped arguing and stood in silence. Anne advised William to appear publicly without mentioning Harry. He followed her counsel, carrying continuity without triumph. Yet beneath that restraint remained the final cost. The crown had gained clarity, but William had lost the last illusion that duty could preserve brotherhood without demanding sacrifice from both men in full view. Beyond the headlines and opposing crowds, the final meaning of the decision rested in the private cost paid by two brothers and the monarchy they could no longer inhabit together. When the royal registers were closed that evening, Harry's name remained part of the family's history, but no longer part of its working authority. William had protected the boundaries of the crown, yet the cost could not be hidden beneath constitutional language. One brother kept the institution he was born to inherit. The other lost the last titles connecting him to it. Neither emerged victorious. The monarchy survived because William chose duty, but their brotherhood did not survive the choice unchanged. The order became permanent. No appeal followed, no restoration was offered, and every remaining honor, privilege, and formal distinction attached to Harry was removed from royal use. A royal register is the official record of recognized roles and status within the monarchy. Closing that record mattered because it ended all uncertainty over what he still represented and prevented future disputes from reopening the same wound. William then recorded a private statement for the royal archive, explaining that he had not acted to erase his brother from the family. He had acted to stop personal access, inherited status, and protected information from being treated as the same thing. After finishing, the prince opened the drawer containing the childhood photograph he had once turned face down. He placed it beside the signed order, preserving both the brother he loved and the decision that separated them. Harry attended the family memorial as Charles's son, not as a titled royal. He entered privately, accepted no ceremonial position, and made no attempt to challenge the outcome. A ceremonial position is the formal place assigned according to rank during a royal event. Losing it confirmed that his family connection remained personal, while his institutional identity had ended. Near the chapel doorway, William and Harry faced one another. Neither moved forward. The future king offered a restrained nod, and his brother returned it. The gesture did not restore trust, but it showed that both men understood the final shape of their relationship. Charles accepted that he could no longer preserve both sons' royal standing. By keeping the invitation open while allowing the order to stand, the king drew a permanent line between fatherhood and sovereignty. Harry left with painful freedom, unable to place every consequence on others. William gained authority, but lost the belief that duty could be exercised without sacrifice. The crown survived, but innocence between them did not. The titles were gone, the order was final, and the monarchy moved forward, protected by William's decision, but permanently marked by the brother he had been forced to leave behind. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.